All right. Hello, everyone. It's 5 o'clock on the 14th of January, and I want to just say thank you for joining us for the last special called committee meeting related to the Knox County Sheriff's Office and the merit system for employees of the Knox County Sheriff's Office. So I appreciate everybody meeting. Sorry it is on Zoom and it is a month behind, but I appreciate everybody's patience and understanding as we continue to get through our pandemic. I want to start our meeting by just saying that the meeting is held electronically in accordance with Tennessee Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order number 65 regarding COVID-19 to ensure the safety of the public and all involved. And that copy of that is available on the commission agenda site if you would like to read that. But that gives the authorization for us to meet and conduct business electronically via streaming. This is also streaming on CTV and then also on the Knox County website. So it is open and available to the public. Let us first start. I'm going to get into some housekeeping things, but Commissioner Durrett, if you would please start us with just calling the roll to identify everybody who's on the call or on the meeting. And you're muted.
All right. Commissioner Jay?
Here.
Commissioner Beeler?
Here.
Ms. Aviles?
Here.
Ms. Oster? Here. Mr. Broyles?
Here.
Mr. Rubel?
We have Chief Purvis sitting in for Chief Rubel.
Okay. Ms. Taylor?
Here.
Lieutenant Molinax? Thank you. And Lieutenant Gibson?
Here.
Thanks. Everybody's here.
All right. Thank you very much for starting off that. There's a little bit of, with the Zoom stuff, if you haven't gone through this yet, there's a little bit more cumbersome things that you have to do than looking in the room and saying, okay, everybody's here, that kind of thing. Also, when we, if we get into any voting, we'll have to do a roll call vote versus just, when we're all in agreement or in the room together. Sometimes I can just, look around and say, is everybody in agreement? Everybody shakes their head and we move on, but it's a little bit more formal. We would encourage you to stay on mute unless you jump in to talk. It keeps the feedback and everything down to a minimum. There is a function if you click on the participant button to raise your hand or digitally, or you can just do this and say, I want to talk and, wave me down. I will do my best to kind of go forward, but it's really hard to like talk over everybody where we're in a room. It's a little bit easier. So again, just kind of yell at me and I'll do my best to make sure I call on everybody in the order that I see them. So a little bit of that housekeeping. Also, I'm going to share my screen several times when we talk about different documents. So although you've been sent everything electronically, it'll also give you a visual. So a couple of those things just off the bat. Everybody good with that so far? Any questions about how we'll conduct the meeting? Okay. I do want to start off before we get to the item number 2. To just say, I want to start us off with a little bit of good news. One of the topics of discussion that we had earlier in the year, I can't remember if it was October or November, but one of our early meetings was having the Merit Council be part of the training program, the CODA training program, and be more involved on the front end so officers know who they were, what the purpose was, why the Merit Council existed, what protections were there, and more engagement on the front end. And that was something that we all kind of agreed, yes, they need to be part of. I was informed today that that is going to happen, and both of the Sheriff's Office administration and the Merit Council teams have gotten together, have talked through that a bit more, and that actually it's going to start next week in orientation. In the process, we had talked about it happening in the training portion later on in the process, but after they discussed it in more detail, it made sense to do it right at the beginning in orientation that covered all the officers, not just one group or the other. So apparently that's going to they've agreed on that, and that's going to happen and start next week. So one of the ideas that came out of this is, before we even get through this whole process, is coming to fruition already. And I really appreciate everybody working together to go ahead and implement that. So a bit of good news to start the conversation. Quick outline of the agenda. We'll go through approval of minutes next. We'll talk about 3 different topics on the agenda. We have some other topics that come up under business. And then item number 7, I actually have sort of a flow chart of sort of what happens next, because this is our last meeting of this special committee. And I'm going to repeat the same things I've repeated every other meeting, which is, here's the purpose, here's where we are, here's what comes out of it, and here's what happens next. I actually have sort of a process chart to kind of show the timeline of that and kind of what do we do now. There's nothing, in my opinion, worse than having a committee or report or a gathering of people and then getting a bunch of stuff ideas and then never doing anything with it. So I've sort of laid out a very specific focus, and I want to share that with you at the end, and then we'll take any other business and we'll adjourn. So that's the playbook for today. Everybody good? All right, seeing some nodding heads. If you're not, speak now. Okay, we'll start with the review and the approval of the minutes, and those have been sent out to you in advance. And are there any changes, additions, edits? I'm not seeing any hands or shaking of the head. So that being the case, is there a motion to approve the minutes in a second?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Scott Broyles on the first and Lieutenant Mullinex on the second. Any further discussion about the minutes? Okay. Madam Secretary, that's Commissioner Durrett, if you would please call the vote.
Commissioner J.
Yes.
Commissioner J votes aye. Commissioner Beeler.
Aye.
Commissioner Beeler votes aye. Ms. Aviles.
Aye.
Ms. Aviles votes aye. Chief Purvis.
Aye.
Chief Purvis votes aye. Ms. Oster.
Aye.
Ms. Oster votes aye. Ms. Taylor.
Aye.
Taylor votes aye. Lieutenant Gibson.
Aye.
Lieutenant Gibson votes aye. Lieutenant Mullinax.
Aye.
Lieutenant Mullinax votes aye. And Mr. Broyles.
Aye.
Mr. Broyles votes aye. Oh, do I need to call myself?
You could just say that you
I
just
vote
give your
aye as
vote.
well.
There you go. Yeah, it's not normally the safe, but okay, we have a unanimous vote of the approval of the minutes. One other bit of housekeeping when it comes to the minutes for tonight's meeting, we will put out fairly quickly, and we will send those all to you for an electronic vote because we are not reconvening, and that will be the last vote, or that will be the last signature. So when we walk away from this, we'll have 4 approved sets of minutes. So be on the lookout in your email. I would like to do that maybe even tonight or first thing tomorrow, just to get it fresh out of everybody's head instead of waiting too much longer. Okay, item number 3 on our agenda is the review and discussion of the reapplication policies. This was a topic that was brought up by the Sheriff's Office administration to review, and I'm going to let them speak on this and then open the discussion from there. So Ms. Aviles, if you want to maybe take the helm and lead this discussion and talk about what it is that you all are interested in.
Sure. So currently, only employees who leave under investigation are not eligible to be rehired. And we would like to expand that to individuals that are dismissed from working here to also not be eligible for rehire. So we don't have to interview them and go through the process knowing that we're not going to hire them at all.
So just so I'm hearing you correctly, currently, is it a policy or is this a
Merit council policy, I guess.
Merit Council policy? Any idea where it is in the book or in the manual?
I don't.
Maybe somebody could look that up while I'm opening the discussion. But
We'll start.
if I'm hearing correctly, that the Merit Council policy says that only those that leave that are under investigation are not eligible rehire. And what you're asking is for anybody that gets dismissed to
Right.
not be can you help explain
Dismiss?
why? Or,
Well, for example, if we have an individual who falls asleep on the job while overlooking an inmate at UT Hospital, which happened, and obviously he's going to get dismissed. If 3 months from now he decides he wants to apply again, I don't want to go through the process. I know we're not going to hire him because we dismiss with cause. So anybody that we dismiss with cause, I think, should not be able to go through the process again because we are not going to hire them.
so let me play devil's advocate a little bit on this just to begin the dialogue. Let's say somebody is dismissed with cause. I'm just thinking procedurally. Let's say that they feel like that was inaccurate. They would be able to go to the merit council and appeal that, correct? That a grievance.
Correct.
And then go through that process. So
Right.
if
And
they
if
went,
they get reinstated, then they get their job back, and obviously we can go through the process.
well, they would still be an employee, but you're saying if they go through the whole process and they get dismissed and that is upheld by the merit council, they essentially should be ineligible from applying. Is that ever again or for a period of time?
I guess it would depend on what the dismissal was for. But if we're dismissing for cause, it has to be pretty grave. So we just don't dismiss for, something simple. We go through a process. There's performance evaluations, and we take many different steps before we get to dismissal. So, and at that time, they are able to discuss if they want to. They can go to internal affairs. I mean, there's other avenues, but by the time we're dismissing you, it's kind of a done deal.
There's
And
some
you've heard us
discussion
speak more about
on this to add context from any of the other members. Any questions about? Ms.
And then
Taylor?
the book, it's on page 23 of the Merit Council Policies and Procedures book, 9.33.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Taylor, I see you. Maybe you want
Yes.
to talk? Okay.
No, all I wanted to say is that is a merit council rule, and the merit council can change that rule. Anytime we have a merit council meeting, I do send out to the sheriff as well as his administration any items that they would like to add to the agenda for the merit council to consider, which would be an item like this, which they have not done yet. But the next merit council meeting is on the 27th of January, and that's still open until next Wednesday for any items to be considered.
Okay. Is there, Ms. Oster, since you were on the merit council, does that seem like a reasonable request? I mean, they would certainly need to go through the process, but part of our committee is to kind of vet things out a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm with Ms. Taylor. I think if they want to put it on the agenda for the 27th meeting, because I think that's a whole council situation that needs to be looked at by all the members.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Any other discussion about this? Ms. Gibson?
Just clarifying, so on page 23, section 9.3.3, we want to add, what was the language we wanted to add?
It reads right now, just for those who don't have the book in front of them, 9.3.3 resignation while under investigation. It reads, former employees of the sheriff's office who have been dismissed, resigned, or otherwise left while dismissal charges were pending or an internal affairs investigation was ongoing shall not be eligible for reemployment with the sheriff's office. So that's about them resigning sort of under a cloud of an investigation or charges being pending. It really doesn't address at all those who were dismissed with cause from reapplying. So they would have to write a whole nother set of language that would be added to that would essentially say, if I'm hearing you correctly, Ms. Avila, like that any employee who is dismissed with cause would not be eligible for rehire, or some flowery language thereof. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Yes.
So does that answer your question, Ms. Gibson? Any additional discussion on this one? It seems kind of cut and dry, and we have an invitation for you all to add that, request that from the agenda on the 27th. I would assume that you would actually submit it with the language that you wanted to read for consideration. Okay. Seeing no further hands or nods or disgruntled looks, I'm gonna move on from item number 3. We're moving right along. Okay. Item number 4 is a review and discussion of military discharge policies. This is something that's come up. This came up a couple of times in conversation. And I also believe that Ms. Aviles, maybe you're gonna take this one on as well. I'd love to, I'm sorry I didn't mark in my book the specific page, but this also had to do with CODA or policies or things. So who wants to lead the conversation on this one?
I'll let Chief Purvis speak to it.
Okay, Chief Purvis.
Right now, the current policy is that we only take the applications for individuals who have an honorable discharge from the United States military. And what we were looking at is the general discharge under honorable conditions. And being able to look at the applicants, many other agencies will look at the general discharge and look at the circumstances surrounding the general discharge and allow employees to apply if it hasn't been something that's a severe infraction that they incurred while they were in the military. If it was something associated with family hardships, or it was something associated with failure to meet a certain standard or something, they're still allowed to apply. And just looking to broaden out to individuals who might be at that current time in life were not able to meet the standard of the United States military, but now may be able to meet the standard that we have, being able to make them eligible for hire with the Sheriff's Office.
Okay, who else? I'm trying to find it in the book. Ms. Taylor, do you know where that is?
For the military discharge is page 12 under eligibility requirements, 6.1.3.
I should just ask you every time because.
And it's E, the letter E.
Okay, so 6.1.3 eligibility requirements. This is.
And
Okay.
again, that is the merit council rule that could be brought before the merit council to consider.
Okay, it says, this is number E, is that correct? Or letter E? Have not been released or discharged from the armed services with less than an honorable discharge. It says, note, the council may waive on an individual basis, depending on circumstances, separations or general discharges under honorable conditions for those persons applying for the positions other than corrections officers. Waivers will not be granted for dishonorable, undesirable, or bad conduct discharges or court martial. So is Chief Purvis, since it has a waiver provision in there, is it because it only gives you eligibility for a waiver for corrections officers, and that therefore disqualifies like jailers and others or civilian? I mean, tell me, it has a waiver. Is it because there's only one, or tell me what the objection is?
All we were looking to, and we can introduce it to the merit system, is just broadening it out so that each individual case can be considered. There's sometimes that an individual will be discharged from the United States military with without an honorable discharge for circumstances that's surrounding failure to pass a PT, or it can be any number of things. Each situation may be a little bit different, and and it may be just the language needs to be broadened out to cover the waiver for any employee that is coming from the United States military with a less than honorable discharge, to be able to look at the individual cases. And we can broaden the language out and just in being more inclusive to each part of the sheriff's office.
Okay. Is there additional discussion on this?
Chief
Mr.
Purvis or
Chairman?
Ms. Taylor, quick question. Scott here. I'm sorry. Myers, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rose. The only point is state law segregates and treats corrections officers differently. And corrections officers, they can be waived, the type of discharge can be waived, but it can only be done by the Board of Control of the Tennessee Corrections Institute. And they have rules on asking for waivers where the sheriff has to, there's a procedure where the sheriff designates someone to submit a request for a waiver. And so if we're talking corrections officers, they're a little different by state law.
Okay, so that one made, Mr. Broyles, go ahead.
Mr. Myers essentially answered the question, and that is, does the state of Tennessee, whether it's post or whether it's the corrections TCI, have an opinion, and have they stated it? So you don't want to run afoul of them by creating something within council that you can't afford to play out with the state.
Is that, Chief Purvis, is that something you all have looked into to see if there's something that would?
Yes, we would like to mimic what the Tennessee Corrections Institute currently does. I've been through those boards and other organizations that do take it to the Tennessee Corrections Institute, and they're able to get the waiver for those employees under those circumstances. We can bring the language that they utilize and let the merit board look at it and see if it's applicable or if they agree that we could utilize it.
Okay, all right. Ms. Durrett?
Mr. Morton, what was the name of the group that the type of discharge can be waived, that can waive that type of discharge? What was the name of it again?
Waivers may be granted for pre-employment. I'm reading the rules of the control board, but waivers may be granted for pre-employment requirement for the following separations from military service: entry-level separation, uncharacterized discharge, or general discharge under honorable conditions. There's a second paragraph that says waivers cannot or shall not be granted from pre-employment requirements for the following separation from military service: dishonorable discharge or dismissal, 2, bad conduct discharge, or 3, general discharge under other than honorable conditions. Okay.
Which sounds kind of exactly what it's in here. But regardless, it seems like this is a wording issue that perhaps, Chief, you can bring to the 27th as well, and perhaps mimic the language or work through it, but it doesn't seem like an issue that is a big contention one.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any further discussion about number 4? Okay, that'll complete number 4. Number 5 is a review and discussion of mayoral council governance. I put this one on there and talked about it a long time ago, but of course we're getting through a lot of things. So I'll lead the discussion on this one, and this is kind of an open-ended one. I do think I want to point out that we did get some guidance from Mr. Morton, and I'd like for him to sort of chime in on this. I'm looking at this as sort of the 2 parts. One, from a open government, open meetings and transparency aspect as it relates to meetings being in the public and recorded, and maybe even, in this case, of course, it would be, recorded in electronic version and streamed, et cetera, and what those sort of open meetings are. I think you opined on that. And then I want to get into the other section about sort of makeup of the board and governance processes before, in addition to that. But Mr. Morton, we brought that up and you talked about it, and I wonder if you could sort of reiterate like what the Merit Council in its normal worlds would be kind of under from open and transparent government process.
Yes, sir. The Tennessee Open Meetings Act, this is pre-COVID. Okay, we start pre-COVID. Tennessee Open Meetings Act required a number of things: notice of meetings, and minutes be taken and have public votes. But the main emphasis of the Open Meetings Act is to have a quorum present in one location. And where the public gets notice on where that meeting is and where the quorum is located. That's the basic purpose of the Open Meetings Act. Now, when COVID came along, Governor Lee started issuing executive orders suspending various laws. And those executive orders have deadlines, they run out. And so currently, Order 65 has been renewed in the current Executive Order 71, which suspends certain aspects of the Tennessee Open Meetings Act if that board decides to do so. So under the Executive Order 71, if the governing body determines that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, they don't have to have that quorum present in a certain location, but under certain conditions. And one of those conditions is a clear audio or video recording of the meeting shall be made available. And it has to be real time, live audio or video has to be available to the public. Those are certain conditions that the governor says you don't have to have a quorum present in a certain location. The way the Merit Council has proceeded, they go under the they don't follow, they have not determined that electronic meetings are necessary. They have it in a location, they spread, they wear masks, and so they don't, because they're under they don't go under the executive order, they're not streaming, and I don't think they have to, as long as they have a quorum in a location. Now, if they get to the point where they decide that it could be dangerous and cause illness, they want to protect the health, safety, and welfare, they can go under Executive Order 71 and start live streaming. But absent that determination, it's not, the law does not require it to be streamed live if they're in a location. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
That's part of my question. Yes, sir. The other part, let's think post-COVID or pre-COVID, back to, let's just assume tomorrow it goes back. So under the normal Open Meetings Act requirement, this would be considered a governing body that would be that would be under the sunshine. Would it be covered under sunshine laws?
As far as the open meetings, they are covered by open meetings, and their records, open records, their records are available. There's exemptions, like certain the personnel records are not public records, but they are covered by open meetings and open records laws, separate laws. Yes, sir.
Okay. And there was some discussion about, I don't think we got to an answer. There was some discussion about, let's say you are in a grievance that when most of the merit councils, you may have policies and procedures, but many of those meetings have to do with grievance issues. And there was some discussion, I think maybe Lieutenant Mullinax brought it up, about what happens when you get into, there's a sensitive information and what's the delineation, and would that qualify for an executive meeting? Could maybe you reiterate that, or what was your concern?
It's this office's advice that the grievance proceedings, grievance hearings are open meetings, and they're subject to the community, the public is entitled to watch it. If there is certain private financial information or private health information that covered by HIPAA, the chairman can put down a protective order saying we're not going to talk about that private health information. It's going to be protected. We're not going to show that. That's how the private information that can be protected. But it's our opinion that grievance hearings are subject to open meetings.
Okay, and they can exempt personal information.
Yeah, by the chairman, if there's a concern brought about it, the chairman can say, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to not broadcast that. It's just for the members of the council.
I'll start with Commissioner Durrett and then go to Lieutenant Gibson. So Commissioner Durrett.
that really gives me pause. So for the simple fact that, you know, this is an employee coming to this council with a grievance against, I mean, it could be a superior. And so once that information gets out, I'm not saying this would happen. I'm just saying, doing the hypothetical devil's advocate thing here. Things could disappear, or proof could disappear, or papers could disappear. Even, you know, all those things, once it's made public of what's going on, that there's a grievance against anyone in a superior position, a lateral position, any kind of other position, if it's made public, that then sets up this person with said grievance for humiliation, bullying, just a total nightmare. They could end up being the one that gets fired. And so, you know, that makes me nervous. I don't know. I mean, you're saying that that's how it is, but where is the safety in that? And having this merit council that's the point of this merit council in the first place, is to have that check and balance against anything like that happening, as it is, you know, we would so wish it would be with any employment opportunity, that there's this other separate, unbiased group that's got your back. And again, I think in our first meeting, I've had a personal experience with something like this, and I had no leg to stand on. And if I had something like this with where I could officially file a grievance, and it was with a superior, and they not know about it, maybe the outcome would have been different. But instead, I was the one that got in trouble. So I got the reprimand just for speaking out against my superior. And so that's where this makes me very weary. If it is how the law is, then I don't know. It's just a scary situation, I think, for employees.
Ms. Gibson?
I agree with that. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but when it comes to the actual hearing that is conducted on behalf of the grievance, it's my understanding that part is part of the open meetings, but the initial phase of the initial grievance process, again, I don't know for sure, but I thought that's where the hiccup was, where it was kind of cloudy. Before all the details come out, before you present your evidence, before you submit your subpoenas at the actual hearing, the previous process was not subject to open meetings.
Yeah, that's correct. The question is, when the Merit System Council meets and deliberates, and here's testimony, is that meeting subject to open meetings? And the answer is the law director's office, yes. That meeting, when they're together deliberating, that meeting and that hearing is subject to open meetings. But you're correct, the process, there's a process to go through before you get to that Merit System Council hearing. And that's not a meeting of which there has to be public.
One thing to bring us to part of the discussion, I think I hear Commissioner Durrett's points very loudly, that, you know, there's a real risk from the employee side. I'll again play devil's advocate and say, what if it's not open and you have, you know, a merit council that makes a really bad decision and no one else is there to, you know, the transparency has to be on both sides, because it protects the employee, but it also, you know, protects the merit council. I mean, the whole purpose behind open government and open meetings is that everything is transparent, so that you don't have the opportunity for you know, abuse or impropriety. Everything is above board, and, you know, just like our committee meetings, you know, there's no sort of whispering in the corner kind of thing. So I think it's interesting conversation, though. I wonder, Lieutenant Mullinax, you brought this up originally, and I wonder if you might if there's something you might want to weigh in on there. I'm sort of calling on you, but you look deep in thought.
No, I'm trying to still wrap my head around when I think when Lieutenant Gibson was talking just a second ago, I think that point to where it transitions to the public meeting, I think that's the key. You still have the proper channels and everything to get to where we're at, but obviously when it's heard, then it's public. I was just concerned, and Myers answered it earlier on the HIPAA stuff. As long as that's the chair or whoever can make that decision to then take the meeting offline and get it still covered with the merit council and everything, then I don't have any problems with it. I just wanted to make sure that was something we could do, and because I didn't want to put somebody's business out there during a meeting. So as long as we can do that and we stick to those rules and everything, I think that answered all my questions. Sorry for the puzzled look.
No, that's fine. I did want to point out in section, this is page 6 of the policy, 4.2.1 meetings. It does outline there that all meetings shall comply with the Tennessee Open Meetings Act. That's all it says. It doesn't, and then a quarterly report shall be submitted to the Knox County Commission by the council, outline any pertinent actions. Is that you send us a monthly report, Ms. Taylor, but I don't think that's the official like quarterly report from I don't think I've ever seen a quarterly report from the Merit Council.
Right. It has been monthly instead.
Okay.
That's how we've done that for several years.
Okay, so that's the same kind of report. You just do it on a more.
It is. It takes the place of a quarterly. There's just so much more information to provide monthly as opposed to a huge quarterly report.
Got it. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Any more discussion on the open meeting side of things? The other half of governance that I was just interested in was the makeup of the Merit System Council. I guess I was kind of shocked when I got to learn more about it, that there were only 3 people on the board. I've never served on a board in any capacity that has so few members and doesn't really delineate what different skill sets or qualifications or sort of where those members come from. Usually, committees have these standing types of things, especially with, big items like this, have more of a one person from this category, one person from this, and it's, much more numbers. And I thought I would just open that up for discussion as well.
Mr. Chairman, Scott here, if he can.
Yeah, I can hear.
One of the things that I had noticed early on, and I looked through some of the same things, and I thought, man, what an awesome responsibility the council has, and what a great job they do with what they have available to them. As I think about the sheriff's department, it's a somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 million organization. It's the second largest consumer of taxpayer dollars in the county. These folks have awesome power, and that is to review grievances, as we've just discussed, to talk about promotions, to provide certification lists. That's awesome responsibility. And when I think about 3 people burdening with the burden of doing that, it got me to looking. And so I looked over at Blount County, and I asked some folks over there, I said, have you got a merit council? Yeah, we got a sheriff's merit council, not identical to what they do, but it's got 5 people. I went to the city of Knoxville, and it's a civil service merit council, but it's got, I think, 7, maybe 5 on that one. Then I got to looking at all 56 boards on the website for the city. And I looked at the makeup of each of those, and they vary in terms of the actual numbers, but none of them have less than 5, and many of them have somewhere near 20. And I think that's obviously way too many. But what I would ask folks to consider, as I look at it from my time in law enforcement and my time looking at this as just a citizen, you have awesome responsibility. 2 people make up a quorum. I know you have 3 people typically at these meetings and you have an alternate, but it does say in the rule book 2 is a quorum. And to hear some of these grievances and the detail associated with those with 2 people just seems burdensome to me. And so I'm bringing that forward to the committee just for consideration. And if it were up to my good thinking, I would really encourage this committee to get behind allowing more folks to participate on that. Maybe that's something commission could take up. I don't know. But thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
Is there some background, Ms. Taylor, maybe that you could
Well,
offer?
That is set up by the ordinance. That is how the ordinance, so it would be county commission. So the number on the board.
Is there any historical information about why it was set up that way, or having an alternate who participates but doesn't vote? Or is there any kind of why it all began that way?
If I may, Commissioner, I'm sorry, Paula.
Yeah, go right ahead.
State law, creation of civil service board, there it says 3 members. The state law, TCA 88404 says it's 3 members. And we're not necessarily, I don't believe that's a good question, necessarily tied to the structure because of the merit system by state law, because we went down a sort of a different alley with our ordinances. And I can't give you a definitive answer, commissioners or committee members, if you can have more than 3. To answer your question, the state law says 3 in the merit system. So I believe historically that's where it started. Whether or not we can have more than 3, I'm not certain as I sit here. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's good context. I would like to ask that question for more research of it. Could it be more? Then I certainly would not want it to be less, but could it be more? And if so, are we able to, is commission able to define who would be on it and why, under what structure? Could it define the structure of that?
I believe it will actually, but I need to confirm that. Okay. And
That'd be a
then
great
it is
question.
kind of commissioner.
Okay, that'd be great. Other discussion about the governance side of this? Ms.
This is
Usker?
Gina. This is Gina. I sit on the Knox County Ethics Board, and they had you all have I believe Commissioner Durant's on that now, but when I sit on there, it was Commissioner Schoonmaker. If that's something that you guys want to look at and have a commissioner sit on the board with us, probably be great for commissioners to understand exactly what we do. And I want to thank Mr. Broyles out loud for recognizing the importance and the seriousness and the scope of this Merit Council and what we do.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Gina, that, this, as we talked about at the beginning and was sort of outlined by our law department, this sort of falls under commission, and to not have a commissioner serve seems a little disjointed. And certainly what we've learned is that more and more commissioners are not really aware of what happens, and having that kind of representation might be good. So that's a great point. Any other discussion about governance? Okay, I'm seeing none on that. I do think that,
Hey, Commissioner Jay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I came in late on that one.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I think having a commissioner on there would be a great idea. Also, I'd like to say, not everybody, obviously, because I like having, people of our community on there, but somebody that has some type, even if there's one seat that has to meet a certain criteria, whether that would be somebody that has some type of specific HR law or some type of, I don't know how we would quantify that, but have one person on there that had, I know that the verb or the verbiage that I want right now is escaping me for what I want, but there was a couple that had criteria, and it was basically like this one seat was almost like a specialized, it wasn't HR, but
I think
I'll get back with you on the verbiage, but
well, let's explore that for just 2 seconds with the committee. What would be appropriate, seats on this particular board? So we talked about a commissioner. You talked about somebody with some legal and human resources experience, since this is obviously deals a lot of it. I would suggest that maybe somebody in a retired law enforcement capacity that was not within Knox County. For instance, you could have somebody that was retired from the FBI, or somebody who's served in a law enforcement capacity but is not tied inside of Knox County. You would want to make sure you didn't, fill it up with all your retired friends kind of thing. So I think some sort of law, I don't know how to define that yet, but does that make sense?
That makes sense. Myers can check me on this, but according to Tennessee Code 88406, members of the board cannot hold any elected or appointed office. So with that would exclude a commissioner, correct?
Under the state law scheme, yes. The question to me that I'm neglecting to answer is that do we have to, are we rigidly bound to the state law scheme? That may be one of them. I know the state law statute does say one provision in the state law is absolutely necessary in every county that adopts a merit system, and that's the forbidding punishment for political or not letting you have political participation. And that's what makes me think that the statute is very, you don't have to follow everything dramatically like you do that one statute, because it does say that is necessary. So the state statute, you're correct, Lieutenant, that you can't have an elected official on the merit council by the state regime. You are correct.
Okay, well, please add that to your list of, could you verify if that is something that follow per being a charter county and being able to have our own ordinances?
I think we can, but I will confirm that, Commissioner. Yes, sir.
What other elements, Mr. Broyles?
You might add to that some sort of corrections experience. We tend to default to law enforcement, and understandably so, but someone with some correction experience on that, because I don't know what percentage of the grievances that you hear are related to corrections, but my guess is it's significant.
It's a good point. Other ideas? These are just ideas of what seats might be on the merit council that would allow it for a broad representation. Ms. Aviles?
Maybe somebody with financial backgrounds, in some of the grievances relate to salaries and such.
Okay. So maybe financial and HR might go hand in hand, or might be separate. Okay. Other suggestions? That I'm just kind of writing them all down. And
you could take a look at the oversight committee. I know the city recently developed, well, probably a year ago, the oversight committee for law enforcement. See how it's structured and see the classifications and what merits someone to be able to sit on that board, and kind of not mold it exactly, but use some of those as examples.
You referring to Park?
Yeah. No, not Park. It's the oversight committee. I don't know the term they use for it.
All right, I'll look it up. All right.
I think Myers is also, if you can check for us too, the way that it's written, how the committee members are chosen is probably going to have, is going to play something in that also. Because it can't be, the way that it's set up right now, I think a commissioner, I think the mayor, and I think the sheriff is the ones that nominate the people to sit on the committee. So you're going to have to figure out how many the sheriff would get, how many the mayor would get, how many the county commission would get. And, I don't know. I don't know if you've all tried to find people to do free work or not that turns into a full-time job, but it's, I think, going to be a little cumbersome when you try to put too many on there.
If I remember correctly, the county commission is exclusively appoints members of the Merit System Council.
That's what it says in here.
That's not how we came to it, though, is what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. I'm sure that could use some more definition as well. That's all right. Any other discussion about governance? Okay, I think that was helpful. All right, so let's move on to other business. The first one that I emailed out to you in other business, this was kind of the big one, and I'm going to share my screen here so that everybody sees it. Well, let me introduce it and then I'll share my screen. This was emailed out to you, I guess yesterday or something. Still working on it up till late, so apologize for that. Was there other business that I sent out? I think there were two, weren't they? Sorry, I'm gonna have to.
Are you talking about the restructured of the proposed process for the hiring process?
Yeah, that's the big one, but I thought I sent a second one out. No, that was related to military discharge, so we already talked about that, so never mind. Yes, okay, so one of the big items, I think this was in our last meeting that we really got into, and this is probably a lot of the sort of the big picture stuff, is essentially who does what, and basically whose role and responsibility is for the onboarding process. We never really came to a consensus, but we talked back and forth about who should do the scheduling and who should do this. It was, I went back through, and in the policy manual, it has all kinds of what has to happen, but nowhere is it list who should have it do this or that or the other. It's not very defined as to only Ms. Taylor and her team can do this, or the administration can do this. So essentially we've come to kind of a crossroads, and we have two things that were mailed out to you or emailed out to you. And I'm going to share my screen, which is this one. And they're basically plan A and plan B. And can everybody see my screen now? Okay. This was the first one. This is the current process. So this is the Shocks County Sheriff's Office employment process. And I'm happy to zoom in on any particular parts, depending on what it is that you want to look. But essentially, this is how it works now. We all went through it step by step from the very beginning all the way through the process. This actions on the bottom left are the colors. Essentially, anything that's in blue is things that the Sheriff's Office administration does. Anything that is in yellow are the things that the Merit System Council, that is Ms. Taylor and her team, do. And then things that are worked on by both in some way, shape, or form are in this pinkish color, salmon color. And then there's notes, throughout the process, and play your game of life, where you start at the beginning, you go through decision making, and you come out at the end, and hopefully you have a candidate that is ready to work for the Sheriff's Office. So I think the big point of contention that we really never found resolve on was who does this section here. And so the Sheriff's Office administration has, this is the second document that you were sent on email, has essentially proposed an alternative. And it's this document that is called the proposed process. And it is essentially a proposal by the Sheriff's Office administration to say, just because it's been done that way doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to do it. And we would like to find a way to do things differently and to take on some more responsibility. Now, if you'll remember, when we had this big discussion, I was very animate by saying, if you are going to propose something, you must absolutely put something in place at the end of the road of this process that allows the Merit Council, because it's their role and responsibility, it's their responsibility after somebody's on board and a certain qualification period to cover them. So if you're going to propose anything, it has to come with a last stop where you don't get to just do it without doing it. So if you will, I kind of open up the discussion, because this is kind of where the divergence happens. And I can't see what you're seeing. So if you need me to scroll in or zoom in, just yell at me. But essentially, this is sort of the break point. If you look at this line right here, it says KCSO HR notifies the merit of a pass-fail result from the, looks like the physical fitness test. And so at that point, under the current system of how somebody is brought on, essentially the Merit Council schedules these psychological tests, the physical, the medical tests, and the psychologicals, and then they come back out. So I believe the big discussion was, when a candidate is going through, they're being sort of handled by the administration first, and then being sent back to the Merit Council, and then back to the administration. And their proposal is, at this point, they are asking to basically handle the part of scheduling the test, the drug test, the physical, psychologicals, and then bring that all through to a point where once that is all completed, before they can make any offer or they can do anything further, they have to provide the Merit Council team a sort of, here's the full packet, here's everything done, here's all the paperwork, here's all the psychologicals, here's all the qualifications, and have a final sign off by the Merit Council before anything is done further. So that is a really long explanation to kind of how we got to this point. But I'll kind of open it up. The proposal came from the administration, so maybe I'll open it up and offer it to them, and then maybe talk to the team in the Merit Council. And then I see Mr. Mullinex. Do you want to jump in before those two?
No, I was just going to ask you, I was out in the field and I wasn't able to grab my printed copies of this. So that column you were just on, if that's, yes, sir, could you zoom in on that just a little bit more? That's
This is the proposed.
That's perfect. Thank you.
This is the proposed. And again, everything is the same up to this point here.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe I'll open it up with the administration team, and then we'll just start the discussion. This is kind of a big one.
Sure. So basically with this new proposed process, we're just looking to not only enhance the process and make it very simple for the candidate, but that way he or she doesn't feel like a ping pong going back and forth between us, Merit, back to us. It just makes it a little bit more cohesive and more enjoyable of a process for them.
Okay. Ms. Taylor, or?
Yes. I really wish it were.
Whoever wants to talk.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's all you. Go ahead.
Okay. I really wish it were that simple with the process. And I wish that if this was straightened out, that all the problems and the issues while we're even here will be settled. Deciding just upon physicals and psychologicals are not going to fix anything. That process is very complete. Yes, we have been doing it that way for a very long time, but it works. They are completed in a very efficient manner. We do speak with the applicants and give them very detailed information. The issue that I have is relying on the HR department to give us that information, because pretty much weekly we get contacted by that department because they've misplaced an application or need information that we've already sent them before. So to depend on them to give us the information we need that meet our requirements for Merit Council is very concerning.
Let me ask you this. When we first talked about recruiting, I think one of the things that this is something we all kind of came to consensus on, and I brought up the point of the sheriff as the elected official and the administration that he is constructed and manages, if they are responsible for recruiting and that is off your shoulders, then never again can they say, you know what, you guys didn't give us enough people, right? And I said, this is an opportunity to say, look, your job is to run public safety, and if we agree on the recruiting, your job is to put as many people in that pipeline, and you're never going to blame us again. And I wonder why this also isn't an opportunity to do the same thing. If they don't do their job, you're not going to sign up on it. So from the recruiting process all the way through, if they say, we're going to do the drug test, we're going to do the psychologicals, we're going to do the health exams and the physical exams, we're going to do all this. If they don't bring it to you and it's in full order and they've done everything they say, again, not your problem, right? The purpose of the Merit Board was to be an entity in which heard grievances and protected employees from political retaliation. I mean, the core purpose is not an HR function. The core purpose has always been to make sure there's protections. So why not say, great, if you don't give us everything and it's items number 1 through 10 aren't in a folder ready to go with all of it checked off, then we're not going to sign off on it and you don't have anybody to fill positions.
The core purpose of the Merit Council and the merit system is for protection of the employees to ensure fair hiring, promotion, and grievance hearing. That's taking the hiring process strictly, which is an unbiased process up to the point they get on the eligibility list, and everybody has an opportunity to complete the same process and be considered for employment. That would be putting that in the hands of the sheriff's office. So that kind of takes merit principles out of hiring completely.
But let me ask you this, the same process of getting on the list is still the same. The eligibility list is still, like, that all happens well early in the process up here, correct? So that doesn't change how people get put on the list.
On the eligibility list, yes. However, it's kind of like a final eligibility and confirmation that they are actually eligible because they meet the final requirements, which are the physical and psychological exams.
And is your concern that an administrative team would be biased in administering psychologicals and physicals? And
it's a possibility, and I'm not speaking strictly of this administration.
No,
it's administration and sheriff to come, and that is the whole reason merit was established from the beginning 50 plus years ago.
Okay. Ms. Gibson, I see your hand up.
I'm along the same lines. It supersedes the original purpose, which we've stated, like a broken record. But where is the fair and equal hiring if someone within a political organization is in charge of that? That's the purpose of the Merit Council, is to take it outside of the political organization, to be an outside entity that is unbiased and fair and equal. And, just hypothetically speaking, I gave the example last meeting. Let's say you have 10 applicants and 2 of them are kin to Joe Smith at the sheriff's office, and then 8 of them aren't. And then HR is scheduling the physicals and whatever they're scheduling and only calls 2 people. Where's the oversight? I'm not saying that like as at our office, just an example. Where's the oversight to ensure that those people who are politically connected are not the only ones to get the phone call, to get the schedule for the PT, to get the schedule for the psychological? Because without any oversight from an outside entity, who will make the assurance that that is indeed being done within a political atmosphere?
But they're still being part of the process because they're part of eligibility. So
are you saying, like, see, up here in this part of the process, Merit Council supplies that eligibility list. So they have 10 candidates and they say, these 10 candidates are ready to go through the tests. I'm just simplifying. Okay. They're ready to go through it. And so at any point along here, the sheriff's office, they could conduct an interview and go, right here at the beginning, this is well before any changes. They could just go, I don't really like, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I like the first 4. Right. And everything would stop right there. Right. Because they're only going to make offers to the first 4. So the system we currently have now does not eliminate a bias at the beginning of the process. They could just say, I only like those 4 because they're my cousins. They don't.
But once you move forward with scheduling things, right now, the way that we have it set up, we still have that outside entity, i.e. the Merit Council, scheduling those appointments to ensure that those are actually phone calls being made. So I'm just saying, hypothetically, the checks and balances are there now because the Merit Council is the oversight. So who's to say, because of its political associations or whatever, a couple of phone calls don't get made and that person doesn't make their appointment? All I'm saying is that I just feel like that. And I'm not using our office as an example by no means. I'm just saying you have an outside checks and balances, not an inside checks and balances, which is the whole purpose of the Merit Council.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Why would the administration make an offer of employment right here at the beginning? Why would they, if they had 10 people and they said the first 4 we want to make offers to, why would they make them an offer at the beginning and sabotage it in the middle?
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, hypothetically, people. Why would they make them an offer and say, we want you to work for us if you pass all these tests, and then sabotage them with a scheduling issue halfway through. I mean, they have to pass this.
I think you're missing my point. My point is the checks and balances throughout the whole entire process. Not the first, not the middle, not the last, the whole entire process, which is why the Merit Council was set up. I just gave that as an example.
Sure. No, I'm just trying to think through the process and think through whether or not, I mean, I'm trying to operate under, just because it's always been done for 50 years doesn't mean it always has to be done for 50 years. Let's think about best practices. And I think we've had enough testimony from everybody to say we're in a different environment for HR that has to be more streamlined, move faster, things like that. I think that's where the original argument comes from, as, less back and forth and more focus, not that, which is why I was pretty insistent upon this last part of, you got to do what you say you're going to do. So I see some other hands up. I want to sort of yield the floor a little bit. Who I can't remember who had hands up. Ms. Aviles?
Yes. So if we are already sharing the applications through a portal or the ATS, you're seeing those applications. You're still involved in the process. We are reaching out. We're doing everything still the same. We schedule the PT test, and then we schedule drug tests and psychologicals, or physicals and psychologicals. Whereas check and balances, you're saying that we here in HR will not do that and sabotage our own. I don't follow. I kind of take offense to that, by the way.
Well, don't take offense. This is part of the process of
Not personal, I'm just saying as an example.
Yeah, she's just trying to sort of bring up a hypothetical of what would happen. So nobody should take offense. This is part of how the sausage is made a little bit. We got to sort of pick through this. I think did I see Mr. Broyles' hand up? Sorry. The very wordy Mr. Beeler. No. Ms. Gibbs, Ms. Oster.
On this whole process, I guess I still kind of come back to the testing. This issue was brought up to the commission. I know myself and the other two council members had to come down 6 times to the commission. So we're back at it again. I don't understand why we're doing this. I've got some numbers that I kind of wanted to share. There were 608 total applicants sent for an interview in 2020 for all merit positions. And the Knox County Sheriff's Office hired 172 merit positions in 2020. So we are not slowing down any of the hiring process. Now, I also do not understand or believe that if this were all handed over to the sheriff's office, that they're going to be able to get testing done any quicker than what we get it done. They're not going to be able to get the paperwork back any faster than we're going to be able to get the paperwork back. This is a checks and balances. Now, I know that you say it's been done this way for 50 years. Well, it's worked for 50 years, and there's a reason why it's worked. It's because we've been able to keep the politics out of it, and the employees have been able to be protected. We are here for the employees. We're not here for the sheriff. I don't care what sheriff it is. And I think that's where we get really confused on this whole issue. So the Merit Council is not interested in giving up the way that we're doing things. There's a retention problem. We can talk about that a little bit later with the numbers that I've got. I got them today. I was extremely concerned of the amount of officers that we're losing, not to mention the amount of taxpayer dollars that's going out the door with them. So the Merit Council is set up, and I've said this and I've been a broken record, but I will do it again, is to protect the men and women of the sheriff's department. Doesn't have anything to do with this current sheriff, this current administration, with Mr. Sheriff Jones, anybody. It's a simple fact that we have a checks and balances that's written into our rules and our ordinances. And we take an oath to protect the rules and the ordinances and follow what we've been laid out to do, then that's what this Merit Council does. Now, if we are providing that number of applicants, nothing's being slowed down. 367 correction applicants were sent for interviews. 199 of them were hired. And out of those, 53 out of that have left since January 1 of this year. We've had 9 employees leave. 6 of the 9 were correction officers. That is huge for our detention center to lose. 4 resigned without notice. 2 of the 9 were patrol officers. Now we have 1 less patrol officer on the road. That's gonna hinder our other officers that are on the road for their safety and their protection. 1 quit without notice. I mean, there's obviously a problem going on with retention. If you go through those numbers, at the very minimum, that's $901,000 to the Knox County taxpayers that we're losing. In 2020, the Merit Council accepted over 896 applications. So the problem in line with the Merit Council and the way that we're sending this over and the way that this is being done. This is definitely an issue if this committee wants to meet one more time, because I think there's definitely a retention issue that we need to be discussing and figure out what's going on. As a Merit Council member and as a taxpayer in Knox County, that's a huge concern to me to lose those kind of numbers. We lost 160 officers last year. 160. That's huge. This process isn't causing that. And I get kind of annoyed when it's constantly brought up that there's a slowdown because of the Merit Council. There's not a slowdown. It's worked for 50 years, and there's a reason it's worked for 50 years.
Thank you, Ms. Oster. Ms. Aviles, did you want to respond? Again, don't make this personal, anyone. Just, we're talking about the process here.
Correct. So when I get applications the day of an interview or the day prior, that doesn't give me enough time to review them. That does slow down the process, okay? When I have applicants call me and say, hey, nobody from the Merit Council has called me to schedule my PT and psychological, that's an issue. So if you want to talk about, go back and forth, we can. I'd rather not. But this is a lot more efficient.
Well, and I don't think it's productive for this committee to go back and forth and get into the weeds on specifics, because that just takes us down rabbit holes. I think refocusing the question before us is, do we feel like there's a better mousetrap? Do we feel like there's a better way to streamline the process, or do we feel like the process works? We have the administration who is asking for a more streamlined process where they take more responsibility but have a verification system with the Merit Council at different points and at this point at the end, and we have Merit Council representatives saying it works just fine, don't change it, everything's okay. So at this point, again, nothing happens because this committee says one thing or the other. The goal of this committee is to sort of examine it, vet it out, bring it out into the open, walk through it, hear all the cases, and simply make a recommendation, and then go from there. It's ultimately, eventually goes to commission to make final decisions. But this is part of why this committee here. So we sort of have 2 options to go for, and what I'd like to do to sort of stay on track is sort of hear final arguments, so to speak, and just, this is the one thing where we haven't had full consensus on, and essentially vote in this committee as a recommendation. And if we want to keep it as it is or go one thing, again, it's just a recommendation, but at least we've taken some sort of action to move forward with the recommendation. So with that, I just sort of, if people want to make some sort of final points on one side or the other, keep it as it is, or go with a more go with the proposed plan, then now would be a good time to do that.
We'd like to go with the proposed plan, please.
Okay. Well, I'll do a vote in a minute, but this is sort of final argument. So make your pitch. You have 9 people on the committee, so I'd love everybody's opinion in some way, shape, or form, if you'd like to give it.
Mr. Chairman, this is Scott.
Yeah.
I know that there is a natural tension built in to the process. It's supposed to be there. It is, as council has said, to protect those potential employees. I understand exactly where the sheriff's department is coming from and needing to move those through as quickly as possible. I'm hoping that there's something that we can work out here to get at least some of the process to a place where it moves most quickly without diminishing the role of the Merit Council. I don't know that that's possible. I hope that it is. So I don't know if I'm prepared to say it's an all or nothing. We must go with this process or it's nothing at all, because I do believe that there are places in there, but I want to reiterate, there's conflict and there's tension because there's supposed to be. There's supposed to be. They represent a side of this process, the council does, that the sheriff's department is supposed to be kept at arm's length from. And so that creates natural tension from the sheriff's department. And as a former law enforcement officer, I know exactly what they feel in that. And working short is no fun, and it is dangerous. So we need to get to the complement that we can, that complement being the number of officers that we can put out there, both in corrections and on the streets. But the natural tension, again, is supposed to be there. There's got to be a piece of this that would flow better on the sheriff's department side. I get that there's room, as Lieutenant Gibson suggested, there's room to play games in the way that we schedule people for PT tests and get them in line and do stuff, or make sure that they don't get the call as conveniently or that not at a time when it's convenient for them to respond. I get that. Games get played. Games could also potentially be played on the council side when they're putting their list together. Let's not, those things are possible. So please find a way, I guess what I'm saying as the citizen representative, to make sure it's as fluid as it can possibly be. It may not be everything that the sheriff's department is asking for, but is there something that we can take from council and give it over to those folks so we have at least a small victory for both sides?
Any additional thoughts from anyone?
Yes, sir. I would just like to say on the suggestion that is being made, it really.
Oh, this is Chief Purvis. Sorry, I didn't see.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm sorry about that. I think the suggestion, not to make it bigger than it actually seems to be, and the discussion, we're basically talking pretty much about a phone call. The merit system sends over an eligibility list. We take from that eligibility list, and we're already scheduling the physical. We're already scheduling the PT test. What we're talking about is basically who's going to make the phone call to another organization. We do not, the psychological exam is administered by members of Helen Ross McNabb. All we're doing is making a phone call, scheduling an exam that those individuals will report back whether they're a pass or fail. So we're not really taking on anything other than a phone call to this organization, setting up these employees that are provided to us by the merit system. And again, we understand that they have oversight, and everything would have to be 100% transparent between the Knox County Sheriff's Office and the merit system. And we're talking about it. We're talking about that everything would be done in real time. They're going to get the results at the same time that we do. So there's not really any failure for the merit system to not be completely involved in everything that we're doing. The only thing is that we would be making a phone call. They would get the results at the same time that we would get the results. We're not asking to be provided information before them. We give them the results at the same time that we're receiving it. So that's I just wanted to point that out.
Ms. Gibson?
I just want to be very, very clear. That was completely a hypothetical scenario.
I think everybody, yeah.
I don't think everybody does. My only point is that is the political entity itself. My example was to just try to paint a picture of when you put it inside of the political entity rather than the outside entity, you're circumventing the process. So if we keep talking about what we're going to do and we're going to be able to do it in real time, regardless of whether we change it or not, whether the merit council does it or HR does it, when it goes to that new process, it's going to be the same. If they can see it when they can see it, then they can see it when they can see it. But by no means am I saying nobody's not going to call anybody. I'm just using it as an example of oversight.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts?
Yes, I get that it seems like it's just a phone call. I understand that. However, we do have the duties and responsibilities to make sure these applicants are eligible. And again, it's not just this administration. If this changes, it is for another administration to come for the future for 50 more years when none of us are no longer here. It's not just changing for one HR department or one HR director or however that goes. If we're not involved in this process, so I know Chief Purvis said that we would be involved in receiving this information as well, but that is not what this proposed document says. It says if the candidate passes all portions, then we will receive that information. It does not say, as of right now, when reports come from Helen Ross McNabb, from Dr. Adlin, we receive those at the same time that HR does. This is totally changed from that. And it says that Dr. Adlin will send those reports for the psychological to HR. So that does take us out of that. And another concern that I have is we've received an email yesterday for a new class that they're looking to start February 1st that went to the training division as well as us, because we are included at this time in that process. And there are 3 people on that list to start that have not even had passed their PT test yet, nor have they had their physical or psychological yet. And you're looking at 2.5 weeks away, which us being involved in this process, we can say, hey, they're not eligible, but they're still on this list. So that is my issue with us not being completely involved at all times and knowing when they're going for this physical, when they're going for this psychological, when the class is going to start, because we don't really even get told usually when the classes are going to start anyway. Eventually we find out, but that's the only way that we can keep up with it is the true checks and balances and being involved in the entire process.
Ms. Taylor, I just had a question on the first point you made. I'm going to share my screen again and look at, well, let's see, how do I do it? There we go. This is the part that I believe you were discussing. Are you all able to see my screen now? Okay. I think one of the points you were making is right now, if they go through the psychological, Dr. Adlin provides a written report to the HR, and it's basically did they pass it or did they not? And if they don't, then you're not really in the loop. They just kind of be told, sorry, you didn't pass it, and so on and so forth. In the spirit of Mr. Broyles, try to find a compromise. If you were notified of that, and if you were, even if they were, I mean, if there was an additional step that essentially said, regardless if they pass or fail, you're given the, if somebody goes out of this world here in the eligibility and starts to go through the process at any point, if they don't make this or this or this or this, you're notified. If they don't ever make it past the next step, you're completely notified along the way. And again, I think that down the road, which is not available now, that I'm envisioning a modern application and onboarding process that is computer-based, that shows start to finish and all the points and all the documents and da-da-da, but that doesn't exist now. So, but I guess my point is there some compromise that says, if you all are kept informed of how somebody is proceeding through the process, if they are able to put them through the process, but you're notified along the way of how it's going, would that be sufficient? Is that a compromise that would allow them to drive the boat, but allow you to see who's on the boat?
I guess what I'm trying to say is by the time we know down here at the bottom, by the time they've passed everything and we're provided a checklist that all Merit Council requirements have been met, they're already looking at starting these people in a class and ready to make that offer. it's kind of too late for us to be involved in that process at that point because we're not included throughout the way. So if somebody doesn't meet a requirement, I mean, we're depending on them to make sure that they do, but that doesn't always happen. I mean, no disrespect to anyone here, anyone involved. The whole reason this committee was supposedly formed was because of communication issues and that the two departments don't get along. I mean, that's very clear here, even tonight with the other items on the agenda. That's never been brought before the council. It's never even been discussed, and they're bringing it to this committee for rule changes that simply could have just been brought to the Merit Council and simply fixed. So that's an issue that I have with not being involved in the entire process. By the time that we receive this information, I mean, they've already reached out to people and probably have a start date, and then we're to look at them. And if we say, okay, no, they're not eligible, you may think that they are, but they're not, then we've wasted a ton of taxpayer money and time on all these other tests. And I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities.
Certainly, if you get to this point and they haven't done what they said they're going to do, they would not be able, the way this is laid out, if I understand it correctly, it would not be able to even send an offer of employment or move forward without final approval. Now, if they've screwed this up along the way, sure, that's, you know, that's on them for doing a good job or a bad job as an administration, but that would be the final check, it seems.
My question is, why do we have to have the opportunity to have screw ups anyways? If the process is working, that's what I'm confused on. Now, if we're just finding out that there are people that haven't been through testing, and Ms. Taylor's finding this out on February 1st, and this is January 15th, I mean, I'll be shocked if they get everything done, all the testing and everything, but there was a lapse of communication. This is going to happen because human beings are involved. Things are going to happen. People are going to be out sick. Things are going to get missing off desk, all that kind of stuff. We have a system that works. My question is, why is everybody so concerned of changing the system when you've got something that works?
I'm sorry to jump in. I believe their opinion is that it doesn't work as well as it could. And this is where we've gotten to. You all have an opinion that it works just fine because you're on one side of the fence, and they have an opinion that it doesn't work fine. And we want to try to find a better way, you know, a better, more optimized way forward where we can move in a more efficient, you know, an effective way, whether it's time or whether it's just communication back and forth or how many people have their hands on it. Ultimately, they think it doesn't work. You all think it works. Here we all are together. So,
well, I mean, but what it comes down to is if there happens to be a screw up and the Merit Council is still responsible for that, we're still responsible for that. But
under the proposed group, you would never sign off on that person joining unless they had done everything they were supposed to do.
So is it Miss Taylor's new job going to be that she's got to track people down if they don't get it to her in the timely manner that we sit here and decide that's going to happen?
If the proposed schedule was put forward, and again, this is just a recommendation on a committee, it's still got other legal processes to go through, but let's just say this was adopted, they would have to supply, the way I read it, the administration would have to supply we took everybody off this list, we made offers to these five went through the process, here's the documentation that they passed this, and this. Here, Merit Council, we've done everything we've said we're supposed to do according to the rules, according to the qualifications, according to everything it is. And you guys look at it and say, yes, they are eligible. They pass their psych, they pass this, they pass that, they pass everything. And we sign off on it. And they would not be able to move forward unless you all signed off on it. Is that accurate in the way that I'm reinterpreting this?
It is to me. I do want to clarify something. The email that went out regarding February 1st, it says on there that we're still working on it. These are folks that came through Merit Council, and we're still working on the process, so that list might change. It says it right there. We're not trying to do anything. We just wanted to be proactive. So we can not do that, but you know, to say that, oh, look, this is what's happening, that's not right.
Okay. I don't have that email, and I don't think that committee, I don't want to get into that. I don't think so. So I don't see any other hands up. Ultimately, I think that the best way to move forward out of this, oh, Mr. Millax.
Sorry, I was just patiently waiting. I wasn't not going to say
Okay,
something.
all right. I'm going to do final call for those who haven't spoken yet.
Okay, yeah. I, yeah, the whole, it's worked for this whole, it's worked forever. It's worked for 50 years. Well, so have planes, trains, and automobiles, but they continue to improve over all these years. You know, you don't want a Model T without Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff nowadays. You know, it's just, there's a point where things have to change. They have to adapt, and they have to morph moving forward. But and I'm just gonna be that guy and say it working for multiple administrations. It absolutely blows my mind that we have what we have now versus in the past, where I know for 100% fact the merit system didn't even get PAFs when people were moved, and there were people that were hired with like no knowledge. So these people are being moved, being promoted, being everything, and I, you know, Paula and everybody over there, I worked with them, you know, a long time. I did the hiring process back in the day with them. But having previous administrations that absolutely did 100% what this merit system is supposed to protect against, it didn't work though. It didn't work, you know, back then, and it happened. So, you know, taking the good old boy system out and all that, I'm telling you, I survived the good old boy system, and they weren't removed. You know, they moved right through the system, and the PAFs, they weren't sent over. You know, so there were people in positions that nobody had knowledge of. There were raises given, all kinds of nightmares that were given, and now it's like this open communication, and you know, which leads to these problems, the open communication and everything. It just absolutely blows my mind, and I'm not going to go any more political
What's a PAF, by the way,
points.
for those who are not in?
Yeah, it's your personnel action form. It's basically you get promoted, you get moved, you get a raise, anything like that. Those happen, and then they're supposed to be sent over. You know, and that's another communication between the sheriff's office and the merit system. But I mean, you know, the surviving things that didn't go the way they were supposed to, you know, was not pleasant, and that's one of the reasons, you know, that I'm doing what I'm doing right now. You know, that I talk to you about things. It's just, you know, and now it's these things have come to a head. And just to be honest, it's not even this administration that did them, you know. So it's kind of frustrating on this side, and I just want this to get ironed out because, you know, just like Ms. Oster said, you know, and we all know it, the retention is the big problem, and I'd love to have that conversation. And I know that's not this committee, don't get me wrong, but you know, she's right. But the speed at which we're getting people and all that kind of stuff, that is not the retention side of it. There are definitely other things that are playing into the retention of our people, not the hiring process. You know, they're not leaving because it was strange when they got hired. They're leaving for very different reasons. And a lot of people just find out, wow, I can't do this job. This isn't what I thought it was. You know, getting spit on and getting hit or other things thrown at you. We'll leave it at that. In the good old jail setting, you know, it's not for everybody, that's for sure. So you either want to get your way out of there or you just going to leave the job. So you know, it seems to me that looking at it, because we're given that the initial job offer, I forgot what the exact term is, but we're given that the job offer at the beginning. The conditional job offer in that your when you were sharing your screen, it was in that second column. So we're giving them then that second or that conditional job offer before they even have all these other things. So to get to this third, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Very nice. To get over to that third column, you know, all these things have to happen. So I don't understand why there can't be some system to where this information is going to both parties at the exact time. Like I brought it up because I wanted to use the blue and the yellow make green kind of thing. And green was, both people. But, if I forgot his name, Padlin or the psychiatrist, if he sends Adlin, if he sends things to immediately one email, and he sends it to both parties at the same time, both parties are notified immediately. And then this just keeps moving forward, moving forward.
I have no issue with that, by the way.
I just don't, if it's those kind of things, I think it's easily, it can easily be handled. It's just frustrating on this side to know what we have survived and now we're here. So I'm going to put my hand down or whatever I'm supposed to do on here.
All right. Any final thoughts from Ms. Durrett or Mr. Beeler?
I'll revisit the conversation he just had. Past, present, future. Things happen and rules are not followed. I think that the new system is circumventing the whole entire process and changing the rules. That's just the way I look at it. And again, I'm not good at articulating my thoughts into making others understand that I want a Bluetooth in my Model T too, Gabe. I'd like a Model T, but that's beside the point. It's the rules, and we're changing the whole entire process behind the rules, if that makes sense. Things can be done outside of the scope of the rules, but when you start changing them, where's the oversight? Where's the checks and balances? Where's the purpose of the Merit Council? In the initial meeting that we had, we talked about new hires, well, even current employees not knowing what the Merit Council did at all. And today, till this day, you ask 90% of them, most of them couldn't tell you what the Merit Council does. In the first meeting, we discussed, letting the new employees get to know the Merit Council from the onset. And this is just, again, it's just my amateur self looking at this. And like Gabe said, there's a whole other issue outside of this, but since we're focused on this, looking at the new proposed process, the only time a new hire meets the Merit Council is when they do that initial test. How are they going to get to know them if they're never really communicating with them? And I'm just looking at it as an employee, as not on either side. Let me be clear, not on the Merit Council side, not on HR side, on the employee side, on the people that are going to come behind me. I'm just trying to make it better for them. And if we want people to truly know what the Merit Council does, how are they going to get to know what they do if they never meet them? And somebody, please, I know you will, but correct me if I'm wrong. They might talk to the Merit Council on the phone during the new proposed process, but they really only meet them at that initial test.
And orientation.
They meet the Merit Council at orientation.
Correct.
So I'm correct. So
aside from the assessment and everything else, then they come to orientation and make a presentation of what they do and who they are and all that good stuff.
Well, that highlights my point, like getting to know what they do through the entire process. And again, it's just me just trying to help the people that are coming behind me.
Makes sense. Do you want to weigh in, Commissioner Beeler or Durrett?
I'll weigh in
I
briefly.
want to move the conversation forward here.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm not an expert in this field. I've done a lot of listening, a lot of learning. And I think when I look at this, there are two issues. There's the efficiency of the procedure, and then there's the procedure itself. And really, we kind of have come down to there's just one point of contention being talked about in this whole process, right? We know what it is. It's the scheduling of the test. So to me, if efficiency is the issue, and I say if efficiency is the issue, then it's possible that the current procedure could simply be looked at and improved rather than changed. The there are really two objectives going on here, and which is the way it's supposed to be. You know, the department, the administration, their ultimate objective is to hire somebody. And so the procedure from the administration's point of view is to determine who are the best people to hire. And ultimately, it's their responsibility to do that hiring. The merit system has a completely different objective. The merit system's objective is to make sure that the procedure is fair and equitable and followed. And that's why there has to be some back and forth. Now, the administration, alleges that the current procedure slows down the process. The merit system disagrees. And, truthfully, we've not been presented any hard data one way or the other. We've simply been presented opinions. So in the absence of that, I don't know that I would be in favor of suggesting any change to the procedure. Maybe simply looking at where the current procedure, if there is a bottleneck, if there is a slowdown, how that could be improved while keeping the same checks and balances in place as they are.
Thank you, Mr. Beeler. Ms. Durrett, do you want to add anything with?
Well, I have to follow the eloquent words of Commissioner Beeler, and really just he took the words out of my mouth, but said them much more eloquently. But I agree with him 100% that HR's objective is to hire and to make sure they have applicants and employees, and the Merit Council's objective is to make sure the procedure is fair. And I mean, basically what he said. I can't say it any better.
Well, let me wrap up this part of the conversation because we have more on our agenda, and just offer my last thought is, I think everybody is in agreement that transparency is key. Everybody's in agreement that checks and balances is appropriate and necessary. And I think that there's plenty of opportunity for checks and balances, but back to what Chief Purvis said, and even what Commissioner Beeler reiterated, is this whole argument is about who schedules two different things. And I don't see it as such a huge departure from the current structure that it fundamentally changes the roles and the purpose of a merit council. This is to me more process and who does what process. And we're talking about two to three things out of 52 steps. And if there's anything that we can do to streamline the onboarding process, then I'm in favor of it. If part of optimization and innovation is trying something, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's trying to figure out how to make a better mousetrap all the time. So I'll leave it at that. What I'd like to do is actually, out of this committee, have a recommendation, and essentially we have a proposal by the administration to recommend doing something differently. Again, nothing changes. This is just a recommendation. There's steps to go thereafter. And if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you'd like to make it as a motion to adopt the process so we can vote on it, is that what you'd like to? That would be sort of the proper forum, is we need to make a decision on what the recommendation of this committee is. Would you like to make that motion?
So what happens if it doesn't pass?
Then there's no recommendation out of this committee to not make it pass, and it stays the way it is. So that's part of what committees do, is we throw stuff on the floor and say, for everything else we've worked on for the last several months, we've all come to some sort of consensus, pretty quickly. This is one that we haven't. So I feel like in order to move on, we need to take a vote.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, Mr. Mullenix?
So just for clarification, what if there's a motion? But I mean, I know obviously whoever can take their own motion, but it's what's happening here is
So you would need a motion. Somebody would need to propose, and this is what I'm asking, is there a motion on the floor? So someone would need to make a motion such as, I'd like to move that we recommend this new process And that would need to be seconded, and then we would all vote on that. And if it passed, then that would be a recommendation out of this committee. If it did not, then it would be a recommendation.
But I was just, for clarification, this new process we're talking about is the sheriff's office would now schedule those 2 tests, and the information would be shared, the results or information or scheduling and all those factors would be shared with the merit system. That's the only thing.
The way it is read, and I'll share the screen again, the way it is proposed is that the sheriff's office administration would schedule the psychological exams, and they would be responsible for this process. You know, after the PT, they would be responsible for the psychological exams, and then they would never offer anyone employment until they would take all of that information, including those things, and say, of all the qualifications here, Merit Council, Joe Smith has this, this, and this, and then the Merit Council would have to sign off and say, yes, we have verified you have done everything that you are supposed to be doing, and only then would they be able to make an offer. So that, and I see Ms. Durrett's hand up.
I mean, essentially the motion could just be that we're adopting this chart as the new process.
Correct.
If it needed to be worded easier.
Correct. Mr. Mullinex?
What I was gonna, and I'll be more than happy to make the motion, is to adopt this, but I also wanna address Ms. Taylor's concerns about that verbiage, so that it does state that that HR will immediately share that information with the merit system, so that they're not left out, or they don't think that, you know, something's happening. That knowledge goes
here.
I'm sorry?
You mean throughout this process here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So if they're going to schedule, if the sheriff's office or the HR, however we want to label that, is scheduling that, and the persons that are attending, and then the persons that pat, and all that, the reports and everything go immediately to the merit system. And my preference would be that it comes from, you know, just like I said earlier, Dr. Adlin sends that to both of them. So it's not coming to HR and then going to the merit system. It's coming from Dr. Adlin to both of them.
So if I might, if you'll allow me to reiterate your motion, clarify your motion a little bit. Your motion might be, if you said so, would be to adopt the new proposed process of roles and responsibilities with the addition of making sure that all psychological reports were simultaneously sent to both parties. And if anyone failed any of these processes, that Merit Council would also be notified.
And we have no objection to that.
Yeah, because
does that clarify what you're thinking?
Yes, because in my mind, that addresses the issues that HR has brought up. The fact that, because if they're immediately notified at the same time, if they're simultaneously notified, then that also allows the checks and balances that all of us want. You know, we all want that. I don't want any of that to go away. So if they're notified at the exact same time, then it's expediting the process per, you know, the sheriff's office HR, and it's also immediately notifying Paula and the merit system, and it's keeping everybody on board, on track. There's no miscommunication. There's no time lapse, anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that Paula's stuff got addressed as well, because I know she mentioned there was some verbiage in there that she was concerned about. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I want to restate the motion, and then you, as the maker of that motion, tell me if I'm accurate.
Well, can I make sure that was Paula's concern before I state my?
Sure.
Is that?
Thank you, Gabe. But that is how it's done now, is we are both notified at the same time. That is how it is already currently done.
So it's strictly the scheduling.
Who's going to schedule? Yes. And who's going to be responsible for the requirements of the Merit Council that all those requirements are met for eligibility?
Well, and yeah. Well, my thought process on that is if we do adopt this and then, you know, it's screwed up, it doesn't fall on anybody but our HR department. I mean, that's so, I mean, if that's what's happening, then, you know, they're cutting their own head off. If they try to pass this, or they want this passed, this is the way they want it, and if the wheels fall off of it, then it falls on nobody but our HR department. So, but if you're notified at the same time, then I would think it would still immediately meet the requirements.
I
the checks and
understand. I
balances.
understand that there needs to be a recommendation one way or the other, however that vote goes. However, ultimately, this is going to have to go back to county commission because it is an ordinance that we do this.
Yeah,
And
it
there's
is.
several other ordinances that would have to be considered, not just the particular one that would change this entire process.
Yeah, and I'll explain those next steps in the next part of our agenda. This is just a recommendation out of this committee. So would you like me to?
Then I would like to make the motion that we adopt this, as long as, you know, the communication stays immediate and that it's not coming to one person before the other. Yes, I'll make that motion.
The motion is to recommend, not adopt, recommend the proposed on hiring flow chart and processes and procedures, the employment process as presented, while making sure that it is clear that all communications throughout this process are shared simultaneously in the scheduling. Okay, so that's from Lieutenant Mullinax. Is there a second to that motion?
I second that.
Okay, so Ms. Avil seconds that. So that is the motion on the table. Again, this is just a recommendation out of this committee. There are many steps left to go after that, but we need to go one way or the other. So
Will you repeat the motion?
the motion is to adopt, the motion is to recommend the proposed employment process as presented by the Sheriff's Department administration with the express guarantee that all communications about psychological testing and final evaluations is made simultaneously with the Mayor Council, and also clarifying that the Mayor Council has final sign off on all hires for eligibility before made, you know, an offer in employment. And then that is a second. We'll clean that up, but that's Mr. Mullinax, is that correct? Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. You are voting to adopt it with those asterisks, or you are voting not to. Mr. Broyles just shaking his head.
Mr. Chair, we got a motion, a proper second. Is up for discussion now?
Yes, so this is, sorry, you're correct. Is there any, I know we've discussed this for quite some time, but is there any further discussion before going to a recommendation vote?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to discuss it just for a second. Having heard everybody make really good points, I go back to a couple of things that really hit me on this. First, as always, Mr. Beeler is very eloquent, and his mention of no data is a very good point. Ms. Taylor said it's not that easy, and I put a lot of trust in what she's saying because she has no reason to. She's the sort of the innocent third party in all of this. She's trying to run the shop over there. As I look at this purpose and scope on page 1.1, to set forth and enforce a structured set of rules and guidelines to favorably influence professionalism of law enforcement in Knox County through fair hiring, promotion, management practices to protect law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the end. You get the idea. It's under the circumstances. I didn't think so, but I'm going to vote no on this.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, if you would, Ms. Durrett, this is a motion to adopt the recommendation, or to recommend the proposal with all of the caveats we've outlined If you vote yes, this will be a recommendation on this committee. If you vote no, then it will not be. Is that clear? And you can do it in any order you want on the roll call because there's no seat numbers.
Okay, I'm going how it is on my paper. All right, Commissioner J.
Yes.
Commissioner J votes yes. Commissioner Beeler.
No.
Commissioner Beeler votes no. Ms. Aviles.
Yes.
Ms. Aviles votes yes. Chief Purvis.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief Purvis votes yes. Ms. Oster.
No.
Ms. Oster votes no. Ms. Taylor.
Sorry. No.
Ms. Taylor votes no. Lieutenant Gibson.
No.
Lieutenant Gibson votes no. Lieutenant Mullinax.
Yes.
Lieutenant Mullinax votes yes. Mr. Broyles.
No.
Mr. Broyles votes no. And Commissioner Durrett is a no vote as well.
Did Commissioner Beeler vote?
Yes.
My vote was no.
Okay. So the vote on, anybody wish to change their vote? Okay, so the vote is 6 no's and 4 yeses, so it does not come out of this committee with recommendation. Okay. I know that was a long process, but I appreciate everybody walking through that and going through the sausage making, as they say. Okay, we are still in our agenda under other business. And so I'll open that up. That is all the other business that I have listed. But if there are other specific things for this commission to consider, this committee to consider before we talk about next steps, now would be the time. Is there anybody that would like to bring up other business that we have not yet addressed? Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands or nods. Ms. Oster, I do see your hand.
Yeah, there was an article that came out last week written by Sandra Clark that you did with her. And there was a couple of things in it that I would like anybody that's listening to this understand, because I felt like that, and this is just me, but I felt like that it put the Merit Council in a bad light. And I do believe that the relationship between the sheriff's office and the Merit Council is fractured. I agree with that. And I also agree that we need to get it working on both sides. And that has been offered to the sheriff twice personally by me before all this started. And my concern with this committee was that it was doing exactly what the Merit Council was not supposed to do. It was not supposed to be a political council. And when we get commission involved, like it or not, commission's political. And I just was a little bothered as a committee member because the council has not gone out and talked to the news to make it a one-sided of this is what we're doing or this is what we're not doing. And we've really tried to play by the rules on that. And Ms. Clark, who has not darkened the doorstep on any of these meetings, wrote in her article that the Merit Council generally rubber stamps a recommendation of the sheriff. Well, I would beg to differ because I don't think we would be in this committee if we rubber stamped everything that the sheriff's office wanted to do. And for this article to come out when the majority of the citizens in Knox County really does not know what the sheriff's council does or Merit Council, honestly venture to say after having conversations, a lot of the commissioners don't understand what we do. And I believe you can address that yourself, Mr. J, because you didn't know at the beginning either. So I felt like that it put us into a light that we had to, that we were hurting our employees because of some administrative issues. And that's just not simply the truth. And this council is there just for the officers and for the employees. It's not set up, and it was never set up. And it just bothered me that that article was written, and it was very one-sided. And I just felt like that, you know, I would appreciate you going back to Ms. Clark and straightening up some of those issues that were in there, because this committee is really trying to get to a better place. And I just feel like that didn't help the relationship advance. And that's just me. But, you know, and I believe that I speak for the council, that we want to be able to work with the sheriff's office. We want to be able to have a working relationship that does nothing but benefits everybody. And so I think it's time to put everybody's opinions and differences aside. You don't have to like somebody to work well with them. And that's what we have to do as adults. And that's what I'm hoping that we can all come to an agreement. And I hope that's what comes out of this committee. And like I said, and this is just a side note, I am more than happy as a council member to sit down and let's talk about what is going on with the amount of officers that we're losing. And I said this at the very beginning, first meeting. My only concern and my only reason I'm being on this council is for these officers. That's it. It's not to make necessarily people happy in administration. That's not our job. And I take it very seriously. And so do the 3 other council members. So, and we do what we're supposed to do, and we do what is right. And I feel like I've had to defend that every meeting. And I don't feel like that's put us in a nice position to be in. So I would like to do something that is a lot more productive, in my opinion, of let's talk about getting more money to our officers. Let's talk about better benefits. And you're the one to definitely be able to do that, Commissioner Jay. I mean, you're the chair. So this is a great opportunity to get this taken care of, because there's something going on that we need to get to the bottom of. And I don't know if it's just money. I don't think it's just that. I honestly don't. There's other things happening, and that's a scary position for law enforcement to be leaving in the kind of numbers that they're leaving in. No matter what the situation is, it's still something that we as a society and a community needs to look at, because it's very serious. So that's my point. I appreciate being on this committee. I appreciate being able to openly talk about, you know, the concerns that we have, and hopefully we can move forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Oster. I hear you loud and clear. I will say, we're asked oftentimes, such as this article and everything else, we're asked to comment, you know, on specific questions, but we don't write or see articles and how they come out and how they're written. So it was certainly not something that I, you know, sought out to put in. Like anything, we get asked, you know, what's going on, and we share 2 or 3 sound bites in a much bigger context. But I appreciate all your conversation or your comments. Mr. Mullinax, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, where is this? I've purposely been staying out of the media.
Oh,
where is this?
Knox TN Today article is what's being referred to. We are still under other business before I walk through next steps. Is there other things that anybody wants to address before we head to the sort of final bits of our meeting? Ms. Gibson?
Under the next steps, is that where we might be able to make a motion to extend the committee to talk about other things, or should I make a motion during other business?
Why don't I outline the next steps, and then you can, before we adjourn, if you would like to make some recommendation, then you can do that at that point, if that's okay.
I'll pre-second that just in case.
Okay, well, hold your seconds and your pre's. So, okay, I want to move on to just sort of the process. This is the same thing I've said since day one, but I want to outline it. I'm going to share this screen again so you all can see it. I laid out a process for sort of next steps in this world, and here it is. Okay, so upon completion of the special committee work and meeting, this assumes that this special committee under its formation would end this evening, which we can talk about. Essentially, this is what I've said I would do from day one. Here's the estimated timeline, but this is our final meeting for the purpose of this committee. Essentially, 2 elements. I always said I'll come out of this with 2 elements. One are any proposed structural reforms to the Merit Council policy procedures that are recommendations from this committee. One example of that is who does recruiting. That was something unanimously we all agreed on. And so that changes a specific thing. The other thing that will come out is essentially recommendations, because I've been keeping notes through these months and months and months of all the things from pay scale to this to retention, all the things that everybody said, these are the things that need work, whether it be on the administrative side or whether it be on the Merit Council side. We've been keeping sort of copious notes on the things that need to be said publicly that are not under the purview of county commission. So the ones on the left over here are the things that are under the purview of county commission making rules and regs. These are just recommendations of, you got to deal with these things if we're going to have a better public, officer workforce. Then essentially my plan was to take both of these items and go and meet with the Merit Council at one of their meetings or their staff or a special call meeting and basically say, here's what I'm about to do based upon the whole committee work. And then also meet with the sheriff's office administration and sort of lay it out. Here are the structural things, bullet points. Here are the recommendations that I think need to be said and everybody needs to be on notice about. Give everybody a preview of those and do that, January, February, and sort of say, here's what I'm heading down the road with. Give me your final thoughts. Then at the same time, work with Mr. Morton and the law department to determine, are any of these issues here structural reforms that need to be in particular ordinances or changes that would go before commission? Because these things are real structure things that have to be voted on by the commission, but that has to be done in proper legal form. And I need to sit down with Mr. Morton and say, here's 4 bullet points that we all came to consensus on that were a recommendation. And, how do we make those happen? Then at that point, these structural reforms would go to county commission for consideration in probably the form of an ordinance. I don't think it's a resolution, but this would go before commission. And then what I was thinking about, because it takes time to change things or get prepared for things. Again, let's take the idea of recruiting. If that was changed in an ordinance that said that the administration is responsible for recruiting, then putting that as a target date at the beginning of the next fiscal year, because it's going to take a few months for, everybody to figure out how we're going to actually do that. And then separately at the same time, those were introduced to commission. I'm looking at the March timeline. These recommendations over here would also be entered into the record as a spreader record. These are the things like pay scale, like recruitment and retention. These are all the things that everyone has said, you got to deal with these things and whose role and responsibility it is. If you all remember, I said very clearly, like the sheriff's responsible for pay. And yeah, he can go and ask for more money, but at the end of the day, so like, this is kind of where, this is not the purview of county commission, but you got to deal with this stuff. And this is what we've heard from everybody. This is the feedback from the officers, from the Merit Council members, from everybody. So again, let's walk through it. Here we are today. Elements, I would argue, and we can go through this, Ms. Gibson, next, that this completes our work as this special committee was formed originally. I work on what is it the big bullet points are that come out of this that are structural. What are the big recommendations? In January, February, I go sit down with both parties and kind of say, here's what's coming down the pipeline. Give me your last thoughts. I sit down with the law department, make sure they're in proper legal form. I take these elements to commission for consideration. They would have to be approved and debated by commission. That's a whole nother process. And probably putting a target date of July 1. At the same time saying, here are the things that we need to improve on as a community for law enforcement. That's how I see next steps, but I open it up for your thoughts or questions or comments. Anyone? Bueller? I'm not, does everybody seem to, does that make sense?
I'm sorry, my battery's going dead. I gotta go charge my battery. But so that means that this committee would be finished, or we would be able to carry on, or how? Would you have to? Well, my question may be better posed. Would you have to form another special committee to address those issues?
Yeah, this committee was set up for this particular purpose, and I think that we have completed that work. And I think over 4 meetings, we have gone through the the guts of this relationship and what can be improved or how can we move it forward. I think that was the intent of this. There's not a reason in the world that if you all want to create another committee that deals specifically with pay scale and retention, that we can't do that. As the chairman of commission, I could do that at the next meeting and say, I'd like to form another special committee to focus on these 3 things. And it doesn't even require approval. It's just a spread of record. And then we would sit down and talk about who's on that committee and, we would go forward. So my recommendation would be to complete this work now, because maybe everybody on this committee would not be part of that next committee. Maybe it would be different people. And so you don't want to be sort of locked into here's exactly the 9 people that are going to deal with, say, pay scales. So I think it should be a separate thing.
So we should not make a recommendation or a motion, correct?
Well, I would recommend.
I'm sorry, I'm really confused. I just want to make sure I understand it
I would
correctly.
recommend no, but Mr. Beeler, maybe you can turn us.
If I could weigh in, I think as a special committee for this purpose, the work of this particular committee is done. Any further issues that don't involve the relationship between the Merit Council and the Sheriff's Department should really be taken up by another committee that the chairman could certainly form, as he said, as quickly as he wants to. And I would be more than happy to volunteer to be on any committee that looks at pay scale, Lieutenant Molinax.
And I think that if you have a recommendation for a committee like that, just send me an email that says, I'd like to recommend you form a committee to do this. And here's maybe some people that would be on it. And this would be the purpose, because I'll need to, basically it's a request of the chair of the commission. I'll be happy to consider all those. Is there any additional discussion on this committee, on this next steps? Is there the formal question, is there any more business to come before this special committee? Seeing none, I don't know what the proper motion is to end and dissolve the committee. Mr. Morton, do you know what I'm supposed to ask to say we are complete in our business and this committee is now done?
I'd suggest you get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn permanently.
Yes.
Make it.
Mr. Molinax with the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Oster. I want to thank you all for your tireless work. This has been a heavy lift and I appreciate it. I do hope that we will all do what we can to work on improving any relationship and helping our officers. From minute one, I've always said our goal is to help our officers and then see what we can do to build bridges. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your many efforts. You will get a final email from me with the minutes for your approval. That's your last duty. And then we will go forward and see how we can help the officers of the Knox County Sheriff's Office.
Do we need to call roll for
No.
that motion? Okay.
No. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good night and Happy New Year.
Thank you.